Welcome back. And then there were 3. What are we hoping for today? I think, to be honest, I'm more curious as to whether a really good whiskey company have saved something really special for the last day. Because I don't think that Master of Malt do. It always seems like Master of Malt are a little bit more random with what they put in what day. It's kind of whatever order they go in. So it will be really interesting to see, because they have put a 25th dram in this, unlike Master of Malt who only give us 24. We've got something for Christmas Day. So you would think it's something to look forward to, wouldn't you? Maybe. So today's whiskey for the 23rd of December. Not peated and not heavily oaked like yesterday's Glenturret. Some good sherry in there, some interesting sherry, very floral and soapy on the nose. And yet again, probably a similar colour to the last 3 or 4 drams. Kind of hoping that we'll get another really pale one, like that Smoky Scot, which we know is 5-year-old Caol. Beautiful colour, beautiful natural colour. Hopefully we'll get another one of those, but we've only got 2 chances left now. And I've tipped that all down the bottle, so I'm having to wipe that off before I get rid of it. Yeah, quite dark, and that probably backs up the fact that I could smell, or I think I can smell a little bit of sherry on the nose of this one. Oh, nice though. Yeah, very sweet and fizzy and intense sherry. Multifaceted sherry, I think, on this one. A little bit of... Now, I'm going to come back to that note later because it sounds a bit negative. I'll start with something positive. Lots of sweet sherry, chocolatey, fruity, fizzy, effervescent sherry, like a grape cola. A little bit of an almond note, that slightly plasticky, nutty note that you get from almonds, if you know what I mean. Incidentally, also the same note as that you get from cyanide, apparently, as I've been told. Not experienced cyanide myself, but hopefully there's no cyanide in this. Lovely nutty almond note though. Chocolatey sherry, grapes, raisins, floral, soapy, and that soapiness is what I was considering saying before. I said I'll start on something positive, but that soapiness is not a bad thing. It's just a floral soapy note amongst the rest of that sherry. A little bit like a floral hand soap, but not in a negative way because it's balanced out by all of those other flavours. So yeah, definitely got a few things going on with this one, and I would say definitely quite a bit of quality sherry gone into it. Possibly a little bit older than most of what we've had so far, I think, because that nutty almond quality is coming through as like a greasy, oily, nutty, walnut, old malt note. So this may be our first 18-year-old whiskey in the calendar. I don't think we've really had anything which is overly old so far. What else have we had that's even got an age statement? We've had a few 12s. Have we had anything older than 12 so far? I don't think we have. Maybe one somewhere, I can't see it. A few 10s and a lot of 12s. Quite creamy caramel sweetness in the sherry. So apart from the real dry, bitter, spicy European oak, it's got probably a little bit of most styles of sherry in this one. All the sweet styles of sherry. So, which probably means that the casks that go into this one, you've either got a mix of bourbon casks and some perhaps PX and some like Oloroso seasoned American oak perhaps, but it's the sweeter side of sherry. Lovely sweet creamy notes really coming to the fore as I'm giving this some time to open up. Let's see how it tastes. I do think that this is going to be one of the older drams in the calendar. It's got some good notes of age to it, but it is a little bit thin, possibly 43 to 45%. Might put a drop of water in this later, but I'm going to give it some time first in case I drown this one like I did with whatever that one was the other day that I put too much water in. Orangey, creamy, oily maltiness, some good age on the palate, but not as complex as the nose. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed with the palate. I was expecting a little bit more. It's a very good whiskey, but I was expecting more from that wonderful nose. I think apart from a creamy orange note, a little bit like an orange fondant, and some sweet maltiness, sweet and creamy, a little bit like caramel cream, they're really about the only flavours that are really jumping out at me on the palate. Obviously I've not given this a huge amount of time or air or any water, but that's the limited range of flavours that I'm getting on the palate, and they're all good flavours, but it's a little bit limited compared to that wonderful nose. Yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit more complexity. Now that the level's going down, I'm going to try adding a little bit of water. Just try not to balls this up like last time. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. Not unless you've got a still in your garage, but that's another story. A little bit of oiliness in that, so possibly chill filtered. Yeah, there's not a lot of haze. I'd expect more swirliness and oils and haziness to come out in that, even this early on, if this was a fully non-chill filtered whiskey. That's really helped the nose quite a lot, which didn't need any help. But it's taken that fizzy, effervescent sherry and just turned it up to 11. Let's put a lid on that, give it some time and a little bit of warmth before we see what it's done to the palate. So this is doing a fantastic job of reminding me why I'm always a bit reluctant to add water to whiskey, because that's not improved the palate at all. I think I'm not completely averse to adding water, but I'd rather only do it to high strength drams than this. Now, I know a lot of people do, and Ralphie is the prime example. You quite often see him dumping a couple of teaspoons of water into something that's already on the weak side. And obviously blenders at distilleries, when they're vatting things together, they'll quite often water things right down to like 15-20% so that you can get the aromas, which, to be fair, is a very good point, because even though this is died because of too much water on the palate, it has really opened up the flavours on the nose, and it makes it quite accessible to get those flavours just by smelling. But when it comes to the palate, I'm guessing I took that probably a little bit below 40%, and it just killed it. So I've poured a little bit more so I can make judgment after having this recently at full strength. I would guess probably possibly a 43% whisky, but with some good age and some good sherry. I think this is probably a good example of a whisky that's got some good aged stock in it, but because it has been aged that little bit more, it's become a little bit gentle and a little bit subdued, and it really needs to be bottled at 50-55% to really carry through those flavours and show just how good it is, because I think that at a higher strength this would be really good, and possibly the presentation as well. I can't say for sure, but that looked like quite a chill filtered whisky. When I added water, nothing really happened. It just stayed very clear and bright and very see-through, very commercialised. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is like an 18-year-old whisky with a little bit of a substandard presentation. So where are we going to put this on the leaderboard? I feel like this is one that could have been very high, but it's probably not going to be, because of what they've done to it. So we've got, I'm probably looking at around about the Tobermory 12 mark. Parkmore, are you safe? I don't know. Could be a good one to fight with that Parkmore, that 7-year-old Auchroisk. I think this one is another difficult one to judge. And I don't know what you guys think, but I think this Advent calendar has been a really good way of highlighting how difficult, and by difficult I mean impossible, it is to accurately judge whisky on a linear scale. Because this is another one where the nose and some of the flavours should put it, in theory, at the top of the leaderboard. Really should. But because of that weak experience on the palate, I'm looking at halfway or below. But then if you get a whisky which has technically inferior flavours but a better body and better intensity from a better ABV and presentation, how do you score those when you've got whiskies which are better than each other in different ways? These are the things that keep me up at night. But I think it's going to go between... Let's have another sniff of that Tamdhu. So that Tamdhu is reasonably low strength. But even this Tamdhu has a better intensity on the palate than today's whisky. I think this one is going to go in below the Tamdhu. So between the Tamdhu and the Benromach. So what have we got? Aberfeldy 16. So I was right. Bloody hell. I was going to say I was right that this is an older whisky, and I think it's the oldest one out of the calendar. But my consternation there was because this is a 40% whisky. Why? Let's have a little bit more. Save a little bit in case I need to go back for any reason. Aberfeldy 16, a 16-year-old whisky, spent 16 years in a cask. 16 years, that's... That's 192 months in oak, and then they've bottled it at 40%. Sound like a good idea to you? Is that a good idea to anyone? That is such a bloody shame, because it smells so good. You can tell that those casks, when they took the bung out of those casks, there was some really special stuff in those casks. And being an Aberfeldy, they like to either mature or finish in sherry, which ties up with what I was experiencing. I assume that this is another either sherry matured or sherry finished whisky, and it smells fantastic. But when you get to the palate, there's a reason why I was so underwhelmed and why I thought it was a 43% whisky, and that's because it's a 40% whisky, which does possibly highlight the benefits of aging a whisky for a very long time, because they've taken a 40% whisky and made it feel like it's got the intensity of a 43% whisky, And that's partly down to the effects of age. You put quality spirit into a decent cask for long enough, and it not only gives you flavours that you can't get out of younger whisky, but it increases the complexity and the mouthfeel. In this case, enough so that it makes it seem like a middle presentation rather than the consumer crap presentation that it actually is. And I believe probably chill filtered as well from how clear that was. So all kinds of mixed feelings on that one. It's a whisky that should have been at the top of the leaderboard, but because of what they've done to it, it kind of deserves to be at the bottom with Jura, because they're just sabotaging themselves. So that's possibly a good whisky, but our third disappointment of the calendar, in my opinion. Let me know if you agree, or if you think I'm just being grumpy, because it has made me grumpy. Hopefully we'll get something better tomorrow and on Christmas Day. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Cheers.